Do you like birds? Do you like it when birds are weird? How about dinosaurs? Then you're in luck because today we're covering part 2 of the Weird Birds Twitter ARG series created by Arcasuchus. Links are always in the description, and if you haven't watched part 1, then I highly recommend watching it first. There are going to be a few callbacks, so it only makes sense to catch up. As for those who have watched part 1, if you need a bit of a recap, part 1 is of a guy who had his life turned upside down after spotting a dinosaur bird creature outside his home who was constantly bugging him until eventually they had a showdown that ended with death. And there's something odd going on with strange lights in the sky, and there's a suspicious organization wandering the streets looking for these creatures and potentially people. Is your memory refreshed? Perfect. As for what you'll expect to see in part 2, it's a whole new protagonist and far more intense encounters that leave you wondering how the protagonist lived as long as she did. It's pretty fun, and of course there's crazy visuals. We even get to learn more about that suspicious organization mentioned before. Ooh. Again, I'm always a sucker for Twitter ARGs, and the story just gets better and better the more you read. And now we can finally see which of my theories I got right or wrong from part 1. So if you're interested to jump into part 2 with me, then sit back, relax, maybe get a snack, and as always, my name is Estrella. Let's explore. Weird Birds, Part 2. The story opens with a young woman on the east coast of Tampa with her brother. They were collecting shells until he got scared of something that creeped out the protagonist. We see a few photos of this trip, and the small creature was assumed to be an isopod, but the protagonist couldn't get a closer look because some birds snatched them up. Luckily, another one was found and it's seemingly alive, which the protagonist believes they're actually kinda cute now. But despite the cuteness, it's best to leave it as nature intended, and the protagonist will send the photos to her uncle by her mother's suggestion because he's a bug guy. And even the brother took some photos of these odd-looking creatures before unexpectedly, people in uniforms and the police arrived to usher everyone off the beach, cutting the trip short. And once the siblings arrived home, suddenly the two started to hear odd noises outside, which they at first assumed to be possibly a pelican. However, it was then discovered to be a big toucan, which the protagonist's father found, and we see the photos of the toucan, but I don't think that's normal. Speaking of which, another odd creature appeared, however, a week prior to present events, and it was compared to a flying dinosaur. The protagonist tries to excuse this as Florida being a weird place with weird things, and to prove this assumption, an odd snake somehow entered the home, which the father character used to broom against it. Sadly, the snake started to leap and fly, making the battle difficult, but it was soon defeated, and it's now dinner time. Delicious dinosaur nuggets. How fitting. It was a calm moment until the brother had to take out the trash but couldn't because a giant bird was creeping outside, which was different from the toucan from earlier. The protagonist assumed her brother was just being lazy and lied, so she took out the trash bin out instead and saw nothing. Not wanting to be called a liar, the brother showed proof of the birds with a photo he took, and this sparked an interest to do more research. It was quickly discovered that a lot of people all around the country are spotting these mysterious prehistoric animals, which we see photos of, and hi Mikey! Obviously the protagonist isn't familiar with who Mikey is, so the audience told her that Mikey's species are relatively okay to be around. We then get told that the brother did something stupid and took an up-close photo of the large bird outside before running back inside, and after seeing this, the father decided to call the cops. Sadly, they're too busy, so the family hunkered down for the night in one room, and nothing out of the ordinary happened, and they all had proper rest. Sadly, the mother is feeling a bit of pain, which could be connected to her 6-month pregnancy, so the father went out to get some meds while the protagonist listens to her brother complain that the internet is out. Luckily, data allows the protagonist to continue updating us, and she mentions finding a disturbing sight outside. A dead bat bird thing? Ugh. Ignoring that, the father returns to the house but was clearly annoyed by something, and he took the mother character to the hospital as the kids stayed behind. Once at the hospital, the parents discovered that they had to spend the night there, which was bad for the children because something appeared on the balcony of their home. The siblings are keeping quiet and hiding, however a video was taken and messed up noises could be heard. This was followed by scratches on the door that was closed to block the creature from seeing them, and the protagonist attempted to call the police, but just like before, they aren't coming. Left with no other option, the protagonist made a makeshift flamethrower in case of an emergency, and the siblings then went to the garage while texting their father to come. Sadly, it's going to take some time for him to arrive, and this allowed the bird creature to attack and break the door while making demonic noises. Luckily, the siblings weren't immediately found, and the father soon arrived to witness these creatures outside the home, which we of course see photos of. The father even texted his kids that the birds are eating gators outside. Like, bro, crazy! Ugh. Anyways, the father reunited with the kids and grabbed the guns from the lockbox, while the protagonist talks about the photos that the audience keeps sending them, which is the same photos from the beginning of the Chicago guy story that we explored in part 1. Anyway, she confirms that one of the birds that she's seeing looks exactly like the one from the photos being sent to her, but there's obviously more than one, and one is huge. The situation is scary, so the father makes both of the siblings hide in the bathroom while he goes hunting with a shotgun, ignoring his fear in order to take out these odd animals. Gunfire could be heard along with both the father and the animal screaming, but the kids have hope that the father is doing alright, and then suddenly they had a close encounter with one of the bird creatures who entered the bathroom. The siblings luckily hid in the bathtub with the curtains drawn and called the house phone, which distracted the dinosaur bird. Now outside of the bathroom, the father managed to shoot it, but sadly it caused the bird to retreat back into the bathroom, and it finally discovered the siblings and pinned the brother down. However, the father isn't done yet, and pushed the kids outside of the bathroom and locked himself in to continue the battle. He was very heroic, but it was his final moments because he died in that room. We see an image of the aftermath with the injured bird, and later the siblings go on to search for the guns because there's no time to mourn, and they need protection. However, unexpectedly, the protagonist could hear her father's voice saying her mother's name, but it wasn't exactly the father. Instead, it was the bird in the bathroom mimicking his voice. At least I think. I could be wrong about that assumption. Regardless, soon enough the animal in the bathroom died from its wounds, and the siblings then went upstairs to their parents' room because they desperately need sleep after the events that just happened. Sadly, it was pretty difficult to get any sleep because they kept thinking about their mother, and later strange noises could be heard outside of the room. By the way, this is also the moment when the protagonist finally makes introductions to the audience. The protagonist is named Bailey while her brother is named Maxwell. Got it? Good. Now returning back to the noises outside of the room, it was bugs or horseshoe crabs that somehow came out of nowhere. Sadly, this couldn't be further investigated because the house front door was soon busted down by mysterious men. Bailey captured recordings of these men talking, however, I couldn't exactly understand any of the words being said, except for maybe like one or two, but apparently these men badmouthed the father character and talked about raptor attacks before talking about a pressure washer? More men then arrived while the siblings continued to hide, and based on the posts, it seems like this is a cleanup crew because it was overheard that the crabs are getting thrown out. The men stayed for hours, and their chats were overheard by the siblings, obviously. However, many of the discussions confused Bailey. Despite this, Bailey and their followers believe these mysterious men could be connected to the ones witnessed at the beach from the beginning of the story, and they are probably the reason why the police don't bother providing aid or even picking up the calls. Anyways, eventually the group of men left and took the father's body with them. As for the siblings, they used this opportunity to investigate, and Max discovered this paper, which was an incident report with a logo that was also seen on the men from the beach. The paper gives us the names of the organisms, descriptions of the civilian fatalities, possible risks, and the men's responsibilities. They are instructed to clean, obscure, rescue, call, capture, and blank. There's more redacted information, however, the most noticeable thing from this paper is the date, and this is important because Bailey questions if these people are from the future. We then see an illustration found on another paper, and I think I know what this means. This is the mysterious light that the previous protagonist witnessed during his journey, and it mentions 3 colors, which there's 2 that we're familiar with. Red and green. The green lights equal the familiar birds we've seen all the time, and the red lights is the large creature, which I believe is the same one that can split its face open that we saw in part 1 of the series. As for purple, it's a mystery. I believe this is implying that specific lights bring specific creatures to the area. Now this obviously instantly caught the attention of the audience because it reminded them of the Chicago guy, the previous protagonist. However, when Bailey tries to look up the account, the information we're talking about wasn't even posted yet. This made Bailey assume that there's a chance she's stuck in the past, but there's no time to think or digest that assumption because a green light started to shine fiercely through all the windows. A light even appeared in the basement, and loud noises were followed by this. Rightfully so, the siblings ran out of the house, and it was pretty much a ghost town outside. There's no cars or people, but despite this, the siblings will stay quiet and try to find their way to their mother. However, something was spotted in the pond. It was compared to a weird-looking gator that was gigantic, which the siblings of course had to run away from, but we see a clear image of it, and boy, is that frightening! There's actually a lot of them, and at some point, one of them ran past the siblings, which was unexpected. It didn't seem to acknowledge them, and it was assumed to be panicking. It's obviously strange. Regardless, the siblings kept moving until suddenly the same bird species that killed their father charged at them, but luckily the two got away and hid while using the gator creatures to their advantage to scare the birds away. This plan worked, and as for the reason why they didn't just use the gun, it's because they dropped it. Yeah, luckily they ran back and retrieved it. Anyways, they also decided to hunker down for the night, and in the morning they went to the beach, which had a lot of bodies around, and oddly enough, most were hanging on trees while others fell to the ground. Ew. But ignoring that, Bailey took a moment to snap a photo of the sky, which we see a bird creature, and then she shares her thoughts about WEHO, which is the group that left the incident report earlier. Bailey is hoping to find these people on the beach to ask questions, and once on a bridge, she took a photo of the ocean, and noticeably, we see odd colors in the water. Familiar colors, actually. Green, red, and purple. That's not good. The siblings then claim to feel like they're being entranced by the sight of the water, until unexpectedly they started to hear ringing in their ears, and a massive light appeared in the sky which broke Max's phone completely. As for Bailey's phone, it's acting weird and buggy, but luckily it's not broken, and we see a photo of what I assume to be the light, which is seemingly miles long. In response to all of this, the siblings began to run. However, the humming noises are getting louder, and it's compared to whale noises. This made the siblings go into a trance again, and they sat down to listen. They remained in the same spot until it started to get dark out, and this snapped them back into reality. But it was only dark temporarily, because it turns out the sun wasn't setting, but instead it was blocked, and now it's not? Suspicious. Following this, we get told that voices could be heard on the beach. However, the people are shouting in a language that the siblings don't understand, and they're seemingly far away. Despite this, the siblings will keep pushing forward to find the people, but they got distracted by the sight of a dead dolphin and a mysterious creature in the water. We see a few photos of this creature, but it eventually leaves, and Bailey then shows us seagulls that are vibing with the humming that could be heard in the air, the same one that relaxed the siblings and almost put them into a long trance. Speaking of which, we actually see the source to this beautiful humming, and it's a very tall, almost translucent and glowy creature. Pretty magnificent if you ask me. Anyways, this creature put the siblings into a trance once again, and they had the urge to get closer to it, which they did, and started moving towards the water. Speaking of getting closer, suddenly they saw something else approaching this ethereal being, and it was straight up a dinosaur, clear as day. Oh boy. But ignoring that for now, there's another dilemma. The bird creature has followed the siblings. Actually, there's two of them, and for some reason they started tearing apart a kid's body in front of the siblings, which provoked Max to shoot his gun at them, but missed, and this made the birds mock the siblings by mimicking the gunshot noises. The birds then proceeded to eat the body in front of them, and as for the humming noises in the air, it was no longer effective and couldn't calm down the siblings. It also doesn't help that they ran out of ammo and they recognized the body that was being eaten, which was a classmate of Max, and the siblings only had a bat left for protection, so stress was finally kicking in. I feel so bad for them. Luckily, the bird creatures seemed to not like the water, so the siblings decided to stay in the ocean but not too deep to avoid the water creatures, until eventually the birds got bored. It was a pretty long wait since they had to stay there all night, but eventually the birds left along with a giant singing creature. And once everything was clear, the siblings decided to go to a store to hopefully find food, and while walking, they stumbled across a drawing on the sidewalk. It's of a man in a suit, which could be connected to the mysterious men that we've been hearing about. But moving on, the siblings found a store with a hanging body inside, so they quickly took some food and left. They also discover a sketchbook with drawings, and the contents are very familiar since they look like the creatures we've been seeing. Or it could be a coincidence and they're just dinosaur sketches. Anyways, returning back to the suspicious and mysterious men on the beach, the siblings witnessed them hauling something huge into a crate and driving off with it. The other strange thing they noticed while on the beach are the animals that are either normal and chilling or odd and getting washed up. Additionally, there's a giant bird which was close by with its child, but it wasn't bothering the siblings, so I guess it's fine. On the other hand, the thing that actually was bothering the siblings is one of the men in suits. One is shouting at the siblings in a language that the two don't understand, and the men even started chasing after them, which of course made the siblings start running. Luckily, they got away before they could get caught, and with this moment of peace, they tried looking up information about this mysterious group, but all they could find was a generic volunteering website. Pretty disappointing. And the mood only continues to go down once they discovered a body on the beach, which I think I'm not allowed to show, so you could check it out yourself on the Twitter, it's pretty disturbing looking. Anyways, the two kept moving, and Bailey is surprised to see the sun now setting despite the time being 11:34 p.m. She can't help but wonder if something is wrong with her phone, and while trying to find an answer, suddenly a helicopter could be heard, which belonged to the group from earlier. Because of this, the siblings had to quickly retreat to a store that surprisingly was well stocked. However, they weren't alone. There's a mysterious, slightly glowing, bat-winged thing inside, but luckily it vanished shortly after being discovered, but sadly the power in the store went out too. It was then discovered that the strange creature thing was still in the store, but there's two of them, which they begin to make a mess because they started to fight each other. So not wanting to get in the crossfire, the siblings grabbed a bag full of food and ran out of there. And remember, it was now dark out, so they had to be cautious around the wildlife, but luckily they had a good laugh when first stepping outside, and the enchanting humming returned, but it was in the far distance. Anyways, they found another building to take shelter in, and while resting, they could unexpectedly hear men speaking that are obviously connected to the mysterious group that are likely sweeping the area. Along with their voices was another strange noise that was soon followed by gunfire, and once everything calmed down, the siblings cautiously checked outside, and they discovered a lot of these men in suits were dead, and their armor was ripped apart. It's almost like they were skinned or chewed up. There was also a mix of blue and red blood at the scene. Red obviously being normal, but blue is pretty surprising. Additionally, it turns out the creature responsible for this massacre wasn't exactly gone despite how cautious the siblings were, because soon enough they could hear the sounds of crying in a separate part of the building, and once they followed it, Max was attacked and slammed to the ground over and over again. It took a moment for Bailey to rescue him, and she managed to drag him out, which luckily he was still conscious and alive, but it doesn't seem like he can walk anymore. Bailey is obviously distraught about this, but at least Max is trying to keep things lighthearted despite the situation. Oh, and it turns out they didn't completely run out of ammo. I guess at some point they found some more and Bailey was able to take out the creature. Regardless, Bailey needs medical attention for her brother because his chances of surviving with those injuries doesn't seem likely, and the only people she can turn to are those from WHO. It might be risky, but on the report paper from earlier, one of their tasks is to rescue, so she hopes that's what they'll do. So they hurriedly went to the beach, but couldn't find any of the men. Left with no other options, they decided to wander the beach, which was probably not easy since Bailey had to help her brother walk, but at least they're keeping the mood light by collecting shells and admiring the birds in the sky. Regardless, they eventually were found by the men in suits, in which the two get told that the ruptures are getting worse, and that they're instructed to follow the men. So they were taken to a helicopter and Bailey asks the men carrying her brother about the papers she discovered. Instead of getting a clear answer, the men just told her that it's not her concern. So she then asks another question, this time about her mother, to which the man doesn't exactly acknowledge until Bailey mentions the fact that her mom is pregnant. This caused a shift in demeanor for the man, which didn't make Bailey feel too good. He then sent a photo to her phone, likely to avoid talking about it directly, and when she looked at it, she was surprised to see this. You know, I had a suspicion that there was something odd happening with the mother's pregnancy, but I didn't want to actually believe it, but now that we're seeing this, I am... Oh my gosh, the baby is getting eaten by a crab creature! Anyways, the man then told Bailey that her mother's belly apparently shrank, and later she discovered that her husband, the main character's father, died, and the mother assumed that her children died with him, so she jumped out the window and passed. Depressing. The siblings were then taken to a hidden bunker, and they were joined by another group of people in which everyone was sent this image of a dinosaur that we all saw earlier. But anyways, the deeper they went into the bunker, the darker the surroundings became. It seemed like only the men in suits can actually see, and suddenly the final image Bailey posts is of one of the men holding a syringe and turning towards the camera, turning towards Bailey. After this, we get Bailey's final message that reads as so: Bailey Kaminsky here. Thanks for reading through my art project for my second semester of high school. The photos are all drawings. Everything is fine in my life and none of this was real. God bless. Might delete all this later, lol. You know what I smell? I smell bullshit. Whoever that was, that isn't Bailey. That ending is clearly a cover-up for everything that the siblings went through, and they're trying to hide the truth from the people following Bailey's journey. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's connect all the dots together at the conclusion. Let's go. Conclusion. Now, just like in part 1, this is a story of a person living a normal life until unexpectedly creatures started wreaking havoc. But the difference here is that the main character is younger and she isn't alone since she's with her brother throughout the entire journey. Another difference is the number of encounters she had with the mysterious group WHO and the amount of new things she witnessed compared to Chicago Guy. Speaking of which, most of the information she posted was pretty useful to us to finally connect the dots in certain aspects of the story, so which of my theories was right and wrong from the previous video? Let's first start with the mutation theory that these creatures were normal animals that turned into prehistoric creatures. Throw that guess out the window. Okay, man, I was wrong, because on a separate post from the creator, it turns out these dinosaur creatures are from the future. You heard me right, billions of years into the future, and somehow they're coming to our present day due to a rift in space-time. And actually, it's not just the future, but the past too, I'm pretty sure, since we do see a Brachiosaurus, which is clearly from the past. But regardless, the other creatures we've seen, like the humming glowing serpent creature, that's never been documented by humanity before, so obviously that's from the future. Same goes for that strange bat-winged dark creeper thingy, and that birds, and the birds, obviously the birds. By the way, the creator of the series freely shared the names of these creatures shown, and I know for a fact I'll mess up the pronunciation, so sadly I won't say them to avoid the embarrassment. Go look them up if you're interested, okay? Anyways, the lights. The lights! Green, red, and purple. Green lights are portals to the past, while red lights are portals to the near future. As for purple lights, they're portals to the way far out future of Earth when it becomes practically uninhabitable. And remember back in the story when one of the members of the suspicious organization mentions ruptures that are getting worse? The ruptures they're talking about are likely the portals that are popping all around the world, and their main task is to track them down, and including the creatures that are coming from these portals to clean up their messes. Additionally, there's an effort to contain and potentially exterminate them, and maybe even experiment on them, and seemingly anyone who bears witness to these creatures have to be eliminated, hence the ending of Bailey's story, unless these people are being used for another reason that we aren't fully aware of. Since a weapon wasn't pulled out at the end of the story and instead it was a syringe, in my opinion, that's pretty telling that the people are being knocked out and drugged and likely dragged off somewhere else. Honestly, these people are very unlucky because they seem to be in different times compared to everyone else. For instance, Bailey is likely a little more into the past compared to Chicago Guy, who we followed in part 1. And then the members in the organization, there seems to be hints of them coming from the future. Because of all this time shenanigans, it's making things very complicated for a normal person to understand, and obviously we're in a different time as well. Also, I'm at least glad that I was partially correct with the assumption that there was time shenanigans. I wasn't confident, but hey, the dinosaurs were pretty telling that something funky was happening with time. Additionally, I was correct to assume that the lights were bringing the creatures to us, but that was pretty obvious, so I shouldn't toot my horn too much about that. And as for the secret organization, I assumed that they were doing a lot of research during the chaos, but it seems like they're doing more than just that, which is fascinating, being a cleanup crew and capturers. Additionally, I forgot to mention this earlier, but in the reports, we can clearly see that WHO stands for Wildlife and Environmental Health Organization. And personally, I would say they seem to be in a bit of a gray area. They're capturing the creatures, which is great, but they're not exactly good guys because of their suspicious behavior, which should be obvious because of what happened to Bailey. But stepping away from that, I want to bring up something that I've partially heard about and find fascinating. It's the assumption that all the events of these characters' journeys are taking place in an alternate universe. The reason why we are seeing these posts and are able to interact with these people is because of these odd rifts that are allowing us to make contact with each other. However, whatever Bailey is experiencing and whatever Chicago Guy was experiencing is something impossible for us to experience. And because they're in an alternate reality, that could also explain why time is so weird, because of course many things are different about their reality to ours. So people like Bailey and Chicago Guy are the unlucky ones who are trapped in an alternate reality in which portals are opening up, while we all are safe in our universe watching from the sidelines. So be grateful that we're not in a post-apocalyptic Jurassic Park type of world, okay people? Be grateful. With that, this is part 2 of the Weird Bird series created by Arkasukas. And this isn't the end of the series because there are multiple WHO files posted, and I believe there's also a part 3, however I don't want to stick with a single topic for too long, so I'll save all of that for the future. However, that shouldn't stop you from enjoying the series on your own time. Links are in the description, so if you have time, feel free to read, it's pretty fun. But first, since you made it this far, I hope that means you enjoyed my video, so please, don't forget to like, subscribe, do that funny little notification thing, maybe follow my other social medias, leave a comment, and I better not catch you dying on me. Goodbye!